is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. New tools may help Louisiana recover quickly from a hurricane. Governor Landry this week, discussing this during a briefing about hurricane season. Louisiana First News reporter Deshaun Johnson shares how the governor plans to prepare for the worst.
As hurricane season officially kicked off this week, state leaders are pressing how important it is to stay weather aware all across the state.
Make sure that you have an evacuation plan. Make sure that you secure important documents, and make sure that you check vital supply kits.
Governor Jeff Landry, along with state leaders, are buckling down and sharing an updated game plan for when and if disaster strikes. With this year marking 20 years since Katrina, he says Louisiana is in a much better spot to be extra prepared, including working closer with FEMA after President Trump's plans of gutting it.
Since that time, we have worked on improving our emergency response. We have worked on improving our infrastructure. We have worked on improving our resiliency in our electrical grid and in our communications.
The state has introduced dozens of new emergency response vehicles ranging from boats to tankers. General Jason Malthus with GOSEP says this is improvement for better ways to get those to safety in case of a disaster.
It also gives us the opportunity to reflect on the interoperability advances that have been made since Katrina. The advent of the Elwyn system, the advent of drone technology, robotics, predictive analysis in the mobile command centers that just didn't exist 20 years ago during Hurricane Katrina.
State climatologist Jay Grimes says this year's hurricane season ranges from normal to above normal. Up to 19 named storms are forecast, with as many as 10 becoming hurricanes and 5 reaching major status. He says now is the best time to get everything ready, like a game and evacuation plan.
So now is the time, in the fair weather conditions, to review your plans. Use your experience over the last 5 years to get yourself prepared for what is very likely going to be another active year in the Gulf of Mexico.
As the season progresses, Landry says he wants to make sure their top priority is staying prepared.
I want the people of Louisiana to know that we are ready. We are going to be consistently going over emergency preparedness operations here at GOSEP.
Deshaun Johnson, Louisiana First News.
Keep it tuned to Louisiana First News as we go through hurricane season. Our meteorologists are making sure to monitor all the developments. You can also keep track of the storms by downloading our free Storm Tracker app. Well, the Secretary of State's office wants the state to pay election workers more money. Secretary of State Nancy Landry, who oversees elections, told the Appropriations Committee earlier this week that attracting younger poll workers is crucial to continue holding elections as the elder workers are starting to retire. House Bill 223 would increase the pay for commissioners in charge from $250 a day to $300 a day, and just election commissioners in general from $100 a day to $150 a day. The bill is headed to the Committee on Governmental Affairs and must still go through the full House for a vote. And speaking of elections, I'll get the latest numbers on which party Louisiana voters are choosing and who's ahead in the New Orleans mayor's race. I'll talk with pollster John Couvillon next. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back to This Week in Louisiana Politics. Well, true to Louisiana fashion, we are not far away from some more elections. We have election dates in October and November. These are not statewide elections, but it's always a good chance for us to take a look at who's registering to vote. For that, we bring in our friend with the numbers, John Couvillon. He is a pollster with JMC Analytics. Thanks for coming on, John.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on your show.
Okay, so let us know, who is registering to vote? Republicans, Democrats, Independents?
So what's happening in Louisiana? Historically, we were a heavily Democratic state, but every month when I look at the voter registration statistics, which are published on the first of every month, there's been a steady narrowing of the gap between Democrats and Republicans, and that, number one, Democrats in absolute numbers are losing registrants. Number two, the gap between Democrats and Republicans has narrowed to about 47,000 out of 3 million, which means I expect probably sometimes next year you'll actually have a plurality of registered Republicans. Number three, the other thing I'm seeing with registrations, which is, by the way, a trend I'm seeing nationwide, is when I look at the changes every month, independents are out registering Republicans, and I think that's part of a broader trend of people being more de-aligned politically.
And who does that favor when there are more independents than, say, Republicans or Democrats?
It marginally favors Republicans in our state because white independents tend to be Republican, but they won't admit it publicly by registering Republican. The challenge about independents, though, by their very nature, they are politically less engaged, which means you also have issues with getting a sufficient turnout of them, which matters a lot in lower wattage type of elections.
Are you seeing any parishes flipping from Democrat to Republican?
So basically what's happened is a lot of the rural parishes now have more Republicans than Democrats. A recent flip, which was last November, was St. Martin Parish. And two parishes that are on the cusp of flipping are Claiborne and St. Mary.
Do you think East Baton Rouge would ever flip?
It's pretty unlikely, given that we are a Democratic-leaning parish, and demographic trends tend to be pushing our parish a little bit more in the blue direction. But Livingston and Ascension do have more Republicans than Democrats, as does West Feliciana. And it wouldn't be beyond comprehension that someday perhaps East Feliciana and West Baton Rouge and Point Capee might flip, but that's further down the road. But right now we do have several parishes in this viewing area that do have more Republicans than Democrats from a voter registration perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those election dates that I mentioned in October and November, you've actually done some polling on those. You did some polling on the upcoming New Orleans mayor's race, which is a very interesting race. And looks like the numbers here you have, so the question is, if the election for mayor of New Orleans were held today, which candidate would you support? You have Helena Moreno at 52%. That is quite a lead. Were you surprised by that?
What's been interesting about that race, and I've actually been polling it several times for private entities, is that the closer we get to Election Day, which will be in October in New Orleans, is that Helena Moreno has not only started out the dominant candidate, but she's further consolidated her gains, whereas her competition, I've not really seen any appreciable movement towards them. And the reason that is important is that in New Orleans, basically it is a 50-50 city racially, which means the ability to build coalitions is vital if you want to win. And that, according to my polling, is what is happening with Helena Moreno, where she's building a broad biracial bipartisan coalition.
What else do you attribute that to? You know, she does have some name recognition because she was a legislator before she was on the city council, and I believe before that she was a television reporter. Do you think she does have some name recognition?
She does. Her being a news anchor, which then was followed with her being a state representative and then a city council person. In these instances, she's had to appeal to a broad audience because both her state house seat and her at-large seat on the city council, which is the entirety of Orleans Parish, involve having to build coalitions to be able to win. And then, of course, when you have near unanimous name recognition like what she had as I understand that she was an anchor. Anyway, having that kind of experience is perfect for running for political office because it means getting people to recognize who you are is much easier than if you were starting off at ground zero.
And he doesn't have to run until 2027, but you also did a favorability question on Congressman Troy Carter. He's one of two Democrats in the Louisiana delegation. He's up on Capitol Hill. It looks like he fared pretty well.
Yes, and what's interesting about that, so in the case of Troy Carter, as would be the case of Cleo Fields and Julia Letlow here locally, they both are up for re-election every even-numbered year, which would be next fall. And so he still has some time before he has to worry about re-election. But what the poll showed is that he and Helena Moreno have almost identical 3-to-1 approval to disapproval ratings, which is definitely a position you want to be in as an incumbent elected official.
I believe she even endorsed him when he was running, Helena Moreno.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting. Okay, interesting numbers all around. I'm sure you'll be doing some more of that for the October and November elections. We'll be paying attention to them as well. John Couvillon, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.